Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Professor Leon Blevins of the Government Department at El Paso Community College. As you know, I've had a number of guests on my show that I've known for a few years, some going back further than others. In 1974, I had a student in class named Nick Nealio, and he mentioned that he had taken a case to the U.S. Supreme Court, and his lawyer was Wayne Windle. I soon met Wayne Windle, wrote an article that was published about him in that case, and then Wayne introduced me to his wife, Janice Windle. Oh my goodness, Janice put me to work very quickly because she was executive director of the Bicentennial Commission celebrating the 200th anniversary of the American Declaration of Independence. Janice, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Leon. You have been a wonderful friend for quite a long time.
Yes, you and Wayne have been good friends of ours, and we have many mutual friends that we
great.
also know and see from time to time. Now, today I want to say just a little bit about the Bicentennial Project. Then we want to take you into the discussion about the Community Foundation, its creation, and the work you've been doing with that. And then we want to close out the program with a little bit about your writing and the books that you've written and the movie. I know one movie has been made out of your work. So let's start with the Bicentennial Commission. How did you get on that commission? What about that?
The city of El Paso advertised the job, and my friend Carolyn Boyd called me and asked me if I had heard about it and suggested that I apply for it. So the rest is history. I applied. I was hired by Mayor Fred Hervey, and I worked for the Bicentennial Commission, which was chaired by Hal Daugherty, who was the president of M-Bank.
In that particular situation, weren't you a student at UTEP at the time?
Yes, that's correct. I was. I had gone to school at UT Austin, and I married Wayne, and I worked while he went to law school, and then we moved to El Paso.
Were you majoring in political science?
Yes.
Well, my field.
Yes.
That's the reason we clicked so easily back
yes.
then, I think it was. So you appointed me to be co-chair of the festival committee, which had to do with downtown festivals and parades and festivals in the park and children's activities and many other things. And I remember in one of the meetings we were discussing that my wife Shanna and our 3 children had been in an outdoor musical drama, Texas.
Yes.
And so you and others pursued that and decided McElligin Canyon would be a great place for such a venue here in El Paso. So you helped put that together. How did that work? Because you had the city and the county that you had to work with.
Well, it was Mayor Fred Hervey's idea. He was very big on tourism, and he thought because of our good weather, we were the ideal place to have an outdoor drama, and he loved McElligin Canyon. He had made a trip to see the Texas show, and he knew it was a big success, so he talked to Judge Udell Moore of the county, and they started working on an idea of having the county lease the property in McElligin Canyon to the city, and then the city and the federal government through grants would try to build an outdoor theater. In fact, it was in a period of economic downturn like we have right now, and jobs needed to be created, and so money was allocated for that purpose.
Well, I should mention we're right now in February of 2009.
Yes.
And things are very difficult with regard to the economy. The project actually put some people to work.
Yes, through the CETA programs and several other programs.
So it was a public works program partly.
It was indeed. A number of the bicentennial projects were public works projects.
Okay. And I remember the big event, it was a historical drama. Then that was eventually phased out. And Hector Serrana, who was in the historical drama, then gave us Viva El Paso.
With Polly Harris.
Right, yes, who I got on city council.
Yes.
So you have been a major factor in putting together 2 locations for performances in this area. So
I can remember going up to McElligin Canyon with Mayor Hervey and climbing around up there on the rocks, and we had people that had sound testing equipment. They didn't want to put it anywhere where there would be an echo or anything like that. Right. And so we tried 3 different locations before they landed on the present site.
Later, my wife directed an Easter musical, a pageant, and part of the time we were at McElligin Canyon, and I played the part of Jesus in that and had the pleasure of performing on a stage that some of us helped put together.
It's a wonderful place.
Great. Okay, we don't want to spend too much time there because your biggest project, of course, has been with the Community Foundation, and the #1 project there has been saving the Plaza Theatre for all of us. So tell me about that. How did the Community Foundation get created, and how did you end up being the executive director of that?
While I was working on the bicentennial project, I knew that job was going to wind down, and it had a contract to it. I read in the Junior League Bulletin that they were helping a group of El Pasoans research the feasibility for a community foundation. And the reason they were doing that is people were drawing wills and sending money out of town. People who had made money in El Paso would die, and their estates would go to charities out of El Paso. So they wanted to try to keep the money in El Paso under the direction of a board of directors made up entirely of El Pasoans. So they spent from 1975 to 77 studying the idea, and then Ricky Fuel, Catherine Brennan, Carl Ryan, a whole large group of people, including Mayor Fred Hervey, whom I had worked for before, were on that steering committee and board. And so they hired me, and I went to work in February of 1977.
I should mention that you were just named Person of the Year by El Paso Inc. publication
A very wonderful
for the
honor.
year 2008. And some of this story is told. If anybody would like to go back and reference and research that, they can read in more detail about your story. And so that is a wonderful, congratulations on that honor.
Thank you very much.
You deserved it.
Thank you. So the Community Foundation had this idea of having projects that would position it as a high-profile community leader, so people would want to will their money to it, and would see how the money would be well used. And so in 1987, a notice appeared in an article in the paper that said a proposal had been made to the city of El Paso by an out-of-town planning group that we should tear down the Plaza Theatre and build a parking lot for the
And you
convention
did like
center.
this.
Actually, it was Betty McGuire who did like that.
Oh, Betty
And
McGuire, right.
She was the chairman of the board of the foundation, and she called and said, "We cannot let this happen. We just have to stop it." So the foundation put up $100,000, which was a staggering amount of money for the little foundation, and that stopped them from doing anything. But they gave us 2 months to raise the money, $1 million.
Wow.
Back in a time when that was $10 million. And they gave us 2 months to raise it in. And there was this tremendous outpouring of love from the people of El Paso. I don't think I've seen anything since comparable to that time period.
El Paso is known as a giving city. Aren't you glad?
They're very generous people here.
Right.
So long story short, we were able to buy the theater, but then it became an up and down project for the next 20 years, on, off, very, very extremely hard project.
And you had to deal with politics because you had a change of mayor every 2 years during that period of time, and different members on city council had different priorities and interests.
Yes.
How did you deal with that?
Not too well at first, because we made the mistake of going in and trying to win them over and trying to get them to fund all of it. And then we backed away and tried to analyze it for a few years, and we said, well, part of the problem is a mayor of El Paso gets elected, but they're usually a one-termer. Right. And what we need to do is find a way to have the plan be overarching over several terms if necessary. So thanks to Ray Caballero, who is a huge supporter of the project.
A lawyer who became mayor.
Yes. We were able to get a contract which allowed the foundation to lease the building back, study the economic feasibility of doing such a project, and then try to put together a funding package. And of course, you know that Mayor Caballero was defeated. And the next mayor came in and was not an outspoken enemy of the theater, but not an outspoken supporter either. But there was this contract in place. The thing that made that so hard was that the final contract with the city had a 2-week time period which I think is required by law, I'm not sure, that you had to put up the money. So here was this $23 million project that we had said, okay, we'll split with you. And we had paid for the land, we had given the theater to the city, but now we had agreed to split on the construction.
Wow.
So again, the foundation stepped up and put up some of the money that it had from the Weiler estate when Mr. Weiler willed KTSM to the Community Foundation, pledged part of that, and then we borrowed some money to get started on the construction. And that took about 3 years, and it was on time, on budget, and no real ugly differences with the city of El Paso.
Right.
We had a strategy about how to do it, and it worked out really well.
Wonderful. Now, you've raised money in a variety of ways. I remember some of us, we bought tiles to put out in front of the theater with names on it.
That's right.
Do you still have that available to people that want to donate that way?
Yes, we do. And we still have brass plaques on chairs, and people can call the El Paso Community Foundation, and we'd be happy to give them some material.
Plus, you'll just take any money they give you for any reason.
We would. We're always looking for money for tickets for groups of children, young people, students, and people think that the El Paso Community Foundation owns the theater. We don't own or operate the theater. In fact, it's a tremendous love of all of the donors, but it is the property of the city of El Paso.
Very good. Now, a number of years ago, we had some deaf children that lived with us at our home. One of them was named Jorge Navarro. Jorge was run over by a drunk driver and his foot was cut off and sewn back at William Beaumont Hospital. And at one point, your foundation gave Jorge some money. And so I ask you to bring today your Spirit of Giving catalog. Tell people how they can give money for specific things.
Anytime that somebody wants to give to the foundation in any amount, we've gotten money orders for $5. We've gotten a couple of $5 million gifts. Those are extremely rare.
Right.
Most of the money comes from people who do memorials, birthday gifts, anniversary gifts, and some people set up long-term charitable funds. You don't have to be wealthy to do that. You just have to be loving and giving. And they set up charitable funds, and those are invested, and they're commingled so that you have a larger amount of money being invested, and hopefully it spins off more income that way. Then the income is used for grants. That backs a program called the Spirit of Giving, which we've had every year for many, many years. And we put trees in the mall where people can look at tags and read about people's needs and buy gifts for other people from this area, El Paso. And the Spirit of Giving catalog, though, takes the organizations of El Paso and shows pictures of them, and it lists the types of things that they need for their organization to be successful. What's interesting about this is a man called me one day and asked me to come to his apartment because he was going to talk about his bequest. And it was just a modest American apartment like many you have seen. Notable, it had pictures of World War II on the wall. But he said, I've given money to my family members and I want to give the rest to the Community Foundation because of this catalog that came in the paper. And when he died, his estate was close to $2 million and is in a fund with his name on it. But he read about the foundation in the catalog and he made up his mind to make that kind of a gift.
Wow. One of our longtime mutual friends, a couple, Bart and Linnell Bowling.
Yes.
Linnell used to work with my wife Shanna in deaf education at Hillside Elementary School. And they set up a trust for hearing impaired children. How does that work? We should come and talk to you, we do the paperwork.
It's not really a trust, it's called a component charitable fund. It's not as complicated as a bank trust.
Oh, okay.
It's a very simple legal mechanism. You come to the foundation or you call us on the phone. You tell me on the telephone what you have in mind. I'd like to give a birthday present to my wife, and I'd like for it to be a fund for deaf education or music scholarships to my alma mater, or maybe it's for the truly needy, or maybe it's for something quite different, like urban development and revitalization.
You work with colonials, don't you, helping them?
We did. We did a large project with the Pew Foundation, a $7 million project over a number of years to help people get water into their homes, water and sewage into their homes. Large numbers of people were affected by that program.
Do you feel kind of like Mrs. Claus, that you're doing so much for all of these people everywhere?
Well, the foundation raises money. It puts the money into an endowment. The endowment earns money. Then it gives it back to the community. So while the foundation has been raising money, it has given back to the community $88 million. Last year, the foundation raised nearly $15 million. A part of that was a bequest from a very lovely lady named Janie Keating, who left many millions of dollars toward a Keating Fund, which is going to benefit animals, children, and education.
Wow. Now, you know how I visualize you? I visualize you as the pebble in the pond, okay?
Yes.
The pebble is
I hope
thrown in the
so.
pond, and then outside of that is your staff.
Yes.
Now, Maggie Sanchez, one of my former
Maggie
students.
Sanchez Mercado.
Okay, right now she's your assistant there at the
Yes.
office. Okay, so you have your staff around you, and then you have your volunteers around you.
Yes.
And then you have outside that circle your agencies, corporations, and so on that are helping to make a better life for El Paso.
That's absolutely correct.
Because you couldn't have done it alone.
Well, I did not do this. I want to be very clear, the people of El Paso did this. And I also want to say that we have a wonderful new president of the foundation, Virginia Martinez, and an absolutely terrific new executive vice president in Eric Pearson. So I'm working full-time at the foundation with an employment contract. I don't mean just volunteer working, I'm a paid employee. And I'm talking to these people who call up and say, you know, I'm thinking about doing something for El Paso in my will. I'm not going to neglect my children, but I want to do something, and I might want to see what I can do during my lifetime. I might want to set up a charitable fund and have the fun of seeing how it goes.
Wow. Now, I know we could spend this whole program just on the Community Foundation, but we want to move now to another area,
Yes.
and that's the area of creativity. You became a writer.
Yes.
By first putting together a cookbook. And then you ended up writing a novel, True Women. Is that the name of it?
Well, there are True Women, then Hill Country, then Will's War. There was the cookbook, and then there's a little children's story in A Texas Christmas called The Night St. Nicholas Fell Off the Roof. So I have 5 things in publication.
Oh my goodness. And of course, I don't know how you find time to do all of this.
Well,
The foundation and the writing and all
that
these
was a
things.
hobby that I started. All my family's been interested in writing. My brother is a retired associate editor of Fortune magazine. But as he says, we have 2 different styles. He writes in a real sleek journalistic style. The fewer words, the better. And he says, oh, Janice writes like a soap opera and goes on and on and on. But anyway, we had a number of family members that liked to write. And my father even had a separate room in the house with a typewriter where he would write. His mother would write. And I love to write, but I read in the paper yesterday that the man was saying in his column that every book he had written was excruciating, I think he said. I think it's a love-hate kind of a thing.
Right, right,
once you get a contract from a publisher, they drive you to hurry and finish the
They
product.
want to start making money off of it.
And mine had been a 17-year saga where I collected materials. And you have to have tremendous amount of research to do the kind of books that I do.
Right. And True Women was turned into a movie.
Yes, it was on the other night, and people called and told me that it was on. And It's supposed to be an evergreen film, one that will go on throughout time as long
It's
as
timeless.
it works.
It's
Yes.
timeless.
Uh-huh.
Well, in the year, I believe it was 2003, I was serving as a greeter at the State Historical Association convention here in El Paso, and I was dressed one day as Don Juan de Oñate, another day as Davy Crockett. So the day I was Davy Crockett, you and Wayne were there, and you were presenting to a group
Yes.
about writing and how some of that writing turns into movies.
Yes, that's true. The turning into a movie is so much serendipity. It's like being struck by lightning twice.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of True Women, I have a wonderful agent, Robert Barnett, and he is often written up in the public himself as representing high-profile people. And he actually represented President and Mrs. Clinton, and people have teased me about, well, did you get the same advance that the Clintons got? Hardly. But anyway, Robert Barnett is the person who then got CAA in California interested in representing my work, and then got CBS interested in doing a mini-series for it.
It just escalated from there. Now tell me about Wheels War. I have started that one. I haven't finished it yet. And that one is about a relative who had legal problems
Yes.
in Texas because he was a little different. He was a progressive in a very conservative location.
Yeah. It's actually my maternal grandfather,
Oh,
Will
your maternal-
Bergfeld, whom I knew very well.
Maternal grandfather.
Yes, and Will was born of German parents, but he was born in Seguin, Texas. And as a young man, he took off to find himself out to West Texas to Weiner, a little bitty town. And he delivered the mail on a motorcycle, an Indian motorcycle, and he went all over to these ranches, and he saw the German immigrants were having so much trouble with water. And they formed an organization of farmers and laborers, and the people who controlled the water viewed that as socialistic, communistic, and they didn't, of course, want the immigrants to have any of the water. Mm-hmm. So they came into conflict with each other, and my mother was a little girl sitting on the floor while her grandfather was playing the violin, and United States Marshals and Texas Rangers broke down the doors and jumped in the windows and shackled her father and took him away and threw him into the cars, empty cars of a train, and took them to Fort Worth and jailed them and charged them with treason in World War I. And the people who have written up that case say that it was on the par with the Aaron Burr cases. Mm-hmm. And a very significant moment in history, but not well known.
Right.
Oh, one of those West Texas stories.
Exactly.
And so Will's interesting background was that his father was Jewish, but he hid that. And he didn't go to the trial because he was afraid the jury might recognize that he was Jewish and hold it against his son. So that's the basic theme of the story, and I won't tell you how it ends, but I don't think I would be here.
Right, if he had been executed.
If he had been executed.
Well, now, instead of you writing history in these cases, now, it's based on history, true stories, you turn these into novels. It's easier to do a novel than to do the history work?
Well, when you do the history work, you can't tell anything about the feelings of the characters. You can't show anger, pain, sorrow, love.
Okay.
And you can't quote them unless you have a paper which shows the documentation of the quote. And the way I heard the stories was from my mother. And she told me that Will said, "Don't ever speak German, it'll get you into terrible trouble." And I never heard him speak German. I heard him he played the piano, and he taught me how to dance. I was supposed to stand on his shoes while he waltzed until I learned how to dance. Mm-hmm. But he would call my grandmother Schatzi, which means sweetheart in German. But he never talked about that trial, but my mother had heard about it. So we took the legal documents, and my husband Wayne helped me figure out what would have been said that wasn't in the transcripts of the case.
You're just like Hollywood. You put words in the mouths of people that they never said, but it makes for better drama.
I try not to do that.
Make it as accurate as possible.
Yes. Almost always there's documentation of oral history behind the things that my characters say and do.
Well, you've been a great contribution to the city of El Paso. We know that. I'm going to give you the chance. We just have about 3 minutes left. Any last words that you'd like to share with the people of El Paso? This is about perspectives in El Paso. What would you like to share with El Paso?
I would like for them to realize what a remarkable place this is to live, and that its quality of life depends upon each of us. We have to attend events in the city. We have to drive around to different parts of our city so we can, east side can appreciate the west, so the northeasterners can come downtown and see how wonderful downtown is.
Right.
We have to unify ourselves, and that's up to each and every one of us.
We need to get you to give a telephone number so people can contact your office if they want to contribute or be involved in some way to make El Paso better. Do you have a telephone number or website you'd like to share?
It's 543-3963. I'd be happy to talk to anyone who's interested in the foundation.
Okay. Well, that's what we need to know at this particular time. I want all of you that are watching these programs, Perspective El Paso, to think how you can contribute to make El Paso a better place in which to live. And let me know if you know someone that you would like to see on this program that they perhaps could also share their vision for the city. Janice, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Leon.
And give my regards to Wayne and the rest of your family.
Thank you, and you say hello to Shannon.
I sure will. Thank you for viewing.